I was stringing Christmas lights, standing still in the dark kitchen, when I heard my mother whisper into the phone, "Just until it's done, then we cut her off." On the other end, my sister sneered. "She's such a loser. Don't let her ruin this holiday." I killed the lights, opened my bank statement, and started the countdown to December 24th. My name is Daniela Weaver. I am 32 years old, and my life is built on precision. I work as a procurement planning manager for Northwind Supply Systems, a sprawling logistics company based here in Boulder, Colorado. My job is to analyze supply chains, predict needs, and ensure that thousands of moving parts arrive exactly where they need to be, exactly when they need to be there. I am good at it. I live alone in a small rented condo that I keep meticulously organized. I am frugal, not because I am poor, but because I value control. My paycheck is predictable, my savings account is healthy, and my retirement contributions are maxed out. I do not date much. I find the inefficiency of modern romance exhausting. My life is a quiet, orderly spreadsheet. This order, however, stops at my own front door. My family is different. My father passed away when I was young, leaving my mother, Vera, to raise my sister Tanya and me, or rather, to raise Tanya. Tanya is 3 years older than I am, and in my mother's eyes, she is the sun. She is bright, spontaneous, beautiful, and utterly chaotic. She married Greg, a man who always seems to be starting a new venture, and together they embody a kind of aspirational, slightly tacky glamour that my mother adores. And then there is me, Daniela, the responsible one, the one who understands numbers, the one who, for the past 6 years, has been the silent financial pillar holding up my mother's entire life. It started with a phone call. Of course, my mother, hysterical. She had overlooked a few things. The property taxes were delinquent. The homeowner's insurance was about to lapse. The house, my father's house, was at risk. It was a temporary tight spot. She had no one else to turn to. Tanya and Greg were strapped starting their new business. So I stepped in, I made the payments, I set up automatic transfers. What was supposed to be a one-time bailout somehow morphed into a permanent, unspoken arrangement for 6 years. A significant portion of my carefully planned salary has been diverted to cover the mortgage insurance, the property taxes, and the occasional emergency roof repair for the house I grew up in. My mother, in return, has continued to live her comfortable, retired life, never once mentioning it again. She just assumed I would handle it, and I did. Christmas was coming, this year, like every year. The plan was to gather at Vera's house, the house I was paying for. Tanya and Greg would drive down, bringing their expensive, poorly chosen gifts and their loud, curated stories of success. My mother had already assigned me my duties. I was in charge of all the food shopping for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, plus the good decorations, the ones that required careful handling, not the cheap plastic ones Tanya favored. I was in the kitchen late on a Tuesday night, about 2 weeks before the holiday. The house was quiet. I had just finished my own grocery run for the week and was mentally adding items to the massive Christmas list: prime rib, wine, pecans for the pies, another line item in the Daniela Weaver budget. My mother had gone to bed early, complaining of a headache, leaving her phone on the kitchen counter. I was rinsing a glass when the smart speaker on the counter suddenly lit up. "Connecting call to Vera's mobile," it announced in its cheerful, synthetic voice. Before I could move, my sister Tanya's voice filled the quiet room, tinny and sharp. "Seriously, Mom? I just checked my calendar. I cannot believe I have to drive 4 hours to sit through this." I froze. My mother's voice, muffled at first, as if from her bedroom, came through. "I know, honey. It is a lot to ask." "It's not just the drive," Tanya snapped. I don't want to spend Christmas with that loser." A cold, sharp stillness settled over the kitchen. The water from the faucet was still running, but I could not hear it. I only heard the word, loser. It hung in the air, aimed directly at me. I was the only other person coming. My mother sighed. It was a long, theatrical sound I knew well. It was the sound that always came before she asked for something. "Tanya, please, you know how important this is. Just until it is done, then we cut her off." My heart, which had seemed to stop, gave a painful, lurching thump. "Cut her off." "Fine," Tanya said, her voice dripping with resentment. "But she had better not pull any of her sad sack martyr stuff. She's such a downer. Just make sure she signs." Greg is getting impatient. "She will sign," my mother said, and the confidence in her voice was the worst part. It was smooth, absolute. "She always does. Now, I told you. I am tired. I will see you on the 24th. The call clicked off. The blue light on the speaker vanished. I stood at the sink for a long time, my hands still on the glass. The silence that rushed back in was deafening, heavier than before. Loser. Just until it's done. She will sign. My first instinct was to run upstairs, to shake my mother awake and demand an explanation, to scream at her. What was done? What was I signing? Cut me off from what? I was the one paying for everything. But the habit of a lifetime is a hard one to break. I am Daniela Weaver. I do not scream. I analyze. I turned off the water. I dried my hands, carefully folding the towel and hanging it back on the rack. The feeling of being excluded, a sensation as familiar as my own skin, was suddenly eclipsed by a new, sharper feeling, the icy, methodical clarity of being exploited. I walked over to the security panel by the back door, a system I had insisted on and paid for after a neighbor's break-in. I keyed in my code. The small screen glowed. I navigated to the audio logs. The smart speaker was linked to the system. I found the recording of the last incoming call. I hit save, then export, sending a secure copy to my private email. I was acting on autopilot, my procurement manager brain taking over where the daughter part of me had just shattered. Back in the kitchen, I sat at the table my father had built, the same table where I did my homework while Tanya was praised for her disastrous art projects. She will sign. My mind flashed back. It was not just the house payments. There had been other things, small things. At first, over the last few years, my mother had periodically sent me documents. "Just a formality, honey," she would say. "The bank needs a confirmation of the money you sent for the roof," or, "This is just the town's form for the tax records. They need your signature since you helped." They were always urgent. She would call me at work. "I need this back by 5 p.m., Daniela, or they will fine me. Just sign it and scan it back. You do not need to read all that legal nonsense." I trusted her. I was the good daughter, the responsible one. I signed, I scanned, I sent them back. I never kept copies. Why would I? It was my mother. The blood drained from my face. I pulled out my laptop. The glow of the screen felt harsh in the dark. I logged into my old email account, the one I had used for years. I searched my mother's name and the word attachment. They were all there, a digital breadcrumb trail of my own stupidity. Payment authorization form, PDF. Tax affidavit, signature page, PDF. Release/confirmation, PDF. Dozens of them, stretching back 4 years, urgent, rushed, unread. I opened one, then another. They were dense with legal text I had never bothered to parse. Hereby authorize, assign power of, on behalf of. I felt sick. The betrayal was so complete, so mundane. It was suffocating. They did not just resent me. They were using me. My compliance, my quiet competence, was not a virtue to them. It was a tool. I did not call my best friend. I did not cry. For the first time in my life, I felt a kind of cold, clarifying rage. I was not a loser. I was a resource, and the resource was about to be depleted. I closed my email. I opened a new, blank Excel spreadsheet. The familiar grid of empty cells was calming. I saved the file to my secure drive. I typed a name into cell A1. Noel countdown. It was not a plan, not yet. It was just a place to put the facts. I started a new tab. I began pulling up my bank statements, going back 6 years. I created columns: date, amount, purpose, payment to Vera. The numbers climbed, thousands upon thousands of dollars, the proof of my loyalty, or my foolishness. I looked at the calendar on my laptop. Christmas Eve, December 24th, the day Tanya and Greg would arrive, the day she will sign. A final, terrible thought clicked into place, locking everything else into focus. They were planning a holiday gathering, a time of supposed warmth and family, to pressure me into signing something final. If they needed my signature on December 24th, what exactly was "it's done"? The Noel countdown spreadsheet was no longer just a list. It was an autopsy. I worked through the night, fueled by a scalding, acidic adrenaline I had never felt before. My procurement manager brain, the part of me they mistook for passive compliance, took over completely. I was no longer a daughter. I was an auditor. I pulled 4 years of bank statements, every transaction. I cross-referenced them with my credit card bills. Each transfer to Vera's account, every third-party payment made on her behalf. Property tax, Boulder County. State Farm Home Insurance, R&J Roofing, emergency repair. I entered every line item. The numbers scrolled down the screen, a monument to my own blind filial duty. The roofing was just last spring, a catastrophic leak that had cost nearly $9,000. The insurance premiums were biannual, a steady drain. The taxes were quarterly, relentless. I hit the sum function. The total stared back at me from cell B52, $84,312.51. I leaned back, the number burning itself into my vision. $84,000. All while I drove a 7-year-old Subaru, packed my own lunch, and skipped vacations. All while Tanya and Greg posted photos from their much-needed weekend in Aspen. Funded, no doubt, by the savings my mother enjoyed from not paying her own bills. The anger was so pure it was almost calming. It was data. It was proof. But the audit was not complete. I remembered an old joint account, one I had shared with my mother briefly when I first graduated college. It was supposed to have been closed 6, maybe 7 years ago. I had moved all my direct deposits to my personal account, but had I ever formally signed the closure paperwork? I logged into my old credit union portal. The account was still active. Its balance was near zero, but it was open. I scanned the transaction history. It was mostly dormant, just minuscule interest payments, and then I saw them. 3 transactions in the last 18 months, each for exactly $500. The payee was listed as G&T Legal Services. The memo line on each read, "Legal consultation fee." G&T, Greg and Tanya. My blood ran cold. This was not just my mother taking my money. This was them, actively dipping into an account I had forgotten existed. My fingers flew across the keyboard. G&T Legal Services. The search results were thin. A new LLC. Registered in Colorado just 2 years ago. The registered agent? Greg Fairchild, my brother-in-law. I left my personal finances and moved to public records. My next stop was the Boulder County Assessor's Office website. I typed in my mother's address, the address I was paying the taxes on. The property details came up, assessed value, tax history, and a link to associated filings. I clicked it. There, filed 3 months prior, was an application for senior property tax exemption. My mother was eligible by age, but the exemption was means-tested and based on hardship. I downloaded the application PDF. I read the sworn statements, Vera Weaver, homeowner, and then the section that made my vision tunnel, a checked box. Applicant has no immediate family members currently providing financial support or assistance. No family support. I was paying for the very house she was claiming to have no help with. But the lie was not even the worst part. I scrolled to the signature page. It was not my mother's shaky cursive. The application had been filed and signed by a family representative. The signature was clear, bold, and arrogant, Greg Fairchild. The phone call replayed in my head. Greg is getting impatient. He was not just a supportive husband. He was an active participant. He was filing false documents with the county in her name. A new, frantic thought propelled me forward. If Greg was filing tax documents, what else was he filing? I navigated from the assessor's site to the county clerk and recorder's public portal. This was where the real documents lived. Deeds, liens, powers of attorney. I searched my mother's name. Nothing new. I searched Greg's name. Nothing. Hesitantly, my stomach twisting, I typed in my own name, Daniela Weaver. One result popped up, a temporary power of attorney, real estate. It was listed as draft, pending notarization. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely click the download button. The document opened. It was a standard legal form, granting specific powers related to the property at my mother's address. It granted the agent the power to manage, modify, and act as signatory on all matters of taxation and municipal assessment. The agent listed was Greg Fairchild. And then I saw it, at the bottom of the second page, the section for grantor consent. My mother's signature was there, and below it, a line for acknowledged by interested party. My name, Daniela Weaver, and next to it, a digital signature. It was my name, but it was not my signature. It was not even a good fake. It looked like someone had typed D. Weaver in a cursive font, the wrong font, too clean, too perfect, and pasted it into the document as an image file. The pixels were blurry at the edges. I stared at it. This was fraud. This was a crime. I looked at the date-signed timestamp next to the fake signature, June 14th. I grabbed my phone and opened my work calendar. My heart was a drum against my ribs. June 14th. I scrolled back. I was not in Boulder. I was not even in Colorado. I was in Chicago, sitting in a conference room at the O'Hare Convention Center for the annual Northwind Logistics Summit. I pulled up my expense reports, my hotel folio from the Hyatt Regency, my dinner receipt from Gibson's. I had an alibi. I saved a screenshot of the fake signature. I saved a screenshot of my travel itinerary. The evidence file was growing. But the document was just a draft. Pending notarization. It was not official, not yet. I picked up my phone. It was almost midnight, but the county clerk's office had a 24-hour automated information line, and sometimes you could get a real person in the records department. I dialed. I sat through the terrible hold music, the robotic voice telling me my call was important. Finally, a tired-sounding woman picked up. "Clerk and recorder's office. This is Maria." "Hi, Maria," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm checking the status of a filing. I saw a draft on the public portal, a temporary power of attorney for the property at." I gave her my mother's address. "One moment," I heard her typing. "Okay, I see the draft filing. It's not executed yet. It's in the queue." "Right," I said. "I was just wondering if an appointment had been set for the notarization. I'm an interested party." "Let me check the notary calendar." More typing. "Yes, we have an appointment for an in-person signing and notarization for that filing. It's scheduled for December 24th at 5:30 p.m. I closed my eyes. December 24th, 5:30 p.m. "Thank you, Maria," I said. "You've been very helpful." I hung up. It all snapped into place, the casual invitation, the insistence on Christmas Eve, the timing. They were not just planning a holiday dinner, they were planning to get it done, to have me, in a room full of family, under the soft glow of Christmas lights, with the smell of pine and roasting meat in the air, sign the real document, to replace the crude fake with my actual, legal signature. They would slide it in front of me with the dessert, and my mother would cry, and Tanya would guilt me, and Greg would call it a simple formality. They were going to use Christmas to pressure me into signing away my rights. I went back to my Noel countdown file. I renamed the second tab, Evidence. I created a list. Audio recording of Mom Tanya call. Bank statements totaling $84,000 in support. Transaction history from joint account, G&T Legal. County tax application. False no support claim. Greg's signature. POA draft with forged D. Weaver image. Work travel records for June 14th, alibi. Confirmed notary appointment, 12/24, 5:30 p.m. I was organizing the files, zipping them into a password-protected folder, when my email chimed. It was from my mother. Subject, Christmas, and one tiny favor. Hi, sweetie. So excited for you to come home. I found a wonderful recipe for your favorite pecan pie. Just one tiny thing. Could you do me a favor? Greg found a new form that will save us a ton on the property taxes. He is so smart, but the deadline is right after Christmas. I've attached the pre-filled PDF. Could you just print it out and bring it with you? We can all sign it together on Christmas Eve. It will just take a minute. Love you, Mom. My hand was perfectly steady as I moved the mouse. I opened the attachment. This was not the temporary tax-only POA I had found on the county site. This was new. This was different. This was a durable financial power of attorney. I read the clauses. It granted the agent, Greg Fairchild, again, sweeping powers, not just for taxes. It gave him the right to access all bank accounts, manage, sell, or refinance real property, enter into contracts, and initiate or defend legal claims on my mother's behalf, and buried in the fine print, a clause that expanded this power to any associated interested party who co-signed. Me. This was not about saving the house. This was about liquidating it. This was the, it's done. They were going to drain my mother's equity, and they were using a fraudulent tax filing as the pretext to get me to sign the document that gave them the keys to the kingdom. I did not reply to my mother. I opened a new browser tab. I searched for Boulder financial elder abuse attorneys and real estate fraud lawyers. I found a firm, Pike & Associates. The senior partner, Allison Pike, had a reputation for being a shark. Her website specialized in complex financial disputes and intrafamilial fraud. It was 1 a.m. I did not care. I opened a new email. Subject: Urgent consultation request. Evidence attached. Dear Ms. Pike, my name is Daniela Weaver. I believe my family is attempting to defraud me and my mother using forged documents and a fraudulent power of attorney. They have scheduled a notary appointment for December 24th at 5:30 p.m. to finalize the act. I have attached a file containing all the evidence I have gathered so far. I need to know my rights. Please, I need your help. I attached the zipped evidence folder. I attached the new, terrifying PDF my mother had just sent. I hit send, and for the first time that night, I let myself breathe. Allison Pike's office replied to my 1 a.m. email at 7:30 a.m. the same morning. The message was 3 sentences long. Ms. Pike's 9 a.m. has canceled. Be here. Bring your laptop and originals if you have them. Her office was in a sleek, modern building downtown, a glass and steel structure that felt worlds away from my mother's cozy, debt-ridden bungalow. Allison Pike herself was sharp, angular, and dressed in an impeccably tailored gray suit. She looked to be in her late 40s, and her eyes, as I laid out my story, were as cold and clear as a winter morning. She did not interrupt me once. She just listened, her gaze fixed on me, occasionally taking a note on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, I slid my laptop across the polished desk, open to the evidence folder. She spent 10 minutes in silence, clicking. She read the PDF my mother had sent. She magnified the fake D. Weaver signature. She listened to the audio file of my mother and sister, her expression unchanging. Finally, she leaned back. Well, Ms. Weaver, you've been a very dutiful daughter and a very thorough auditor. They are planning to strip your mother's house of all its equity, and they are planning to have you co-sign the documents that let them do it. I nodded, the validation a cold comfort. The new PDF she sent, the durable power of attorney. Exactly, Allison said. This is a classic second mortgage setup. Greg, as the agent, could use this document to borrow against the home's value. He could pull out $200,000, maybe more in this market. He would then, I assume, funnel that cash into his ventures, which, Judging by this G&T Legal Services invoice, are shell companies designed to launder the money. By the time the bank comes to collect, he and your sister will be long gone. Your mother will be homeless. And you, she tapped the co-signatory clause, could be on the hook for the debt. The sheer calculated cruelty of it left me breathless. So what do? We do not react. We prepare, Allison said, her voice shifting from analyst to general. Your evidence is excellent, but we need to make it ironclad. We need to create a legal trap so tight that when they step into it on December 24th, they have no choice but to comply with our demands. The word demands felt foreign. I was used to giving, not demanding. First, the audio, she said. The chain of custody is weak. You exported it. We need to validate it. I want a forensic hash pulled directly from the home security system's IoT device. It creates a digital timestamp, a fingerprint, that proves the file has not been altered since the moment it was recorded. Can you get access to the main panel? I paid for it. I have the master admin codes, I said. Good. My IT person will email you instructions. Do it tonight. Second, that forged signature on the county draft. It's our primary leverage. My office will draft a formal letter to the Boulder County Clerk and Recorder's Office, specifically naming the notary on that file. We will state that any document presented with your name is potentially fraudulent, and that any attempt to notarize it on December 24th will be met with a legal challenge and a request for investigation. We'll send it via courier tomorrow morning. It will put them on high alert. She was already drafting the letter as she spoke. Third, your financial support, she continued. That no family support claim Greg filed is perjury. Your spreadsheet is a good start, but we need a sworn affidavit. Today, you will go back through all $84,000 and write a statement, under penalty of perjury, detailing every single payment. We will attach your bank statements as exhibits. This affidavit will be our hammer. She ticked off the next point on her fingers. Fourth, we need to know what else they have filed. I am filing a formal public records request with the county on your behalf for any and all documents, drafts or executed, bearing your name from the last 24 months. If they have tried this before, we will find it. My mind was racing, trying to keep up. This was a language I understood. Action, data, process. What about the house itself? I asked. The insurance. I pay it. Call them, Allison ordered. Today, get a letter of payment history sent to you. We need an official document from the insurance company showing that the policyholder of record is Vera Weaver, but the payer of record is Daniela Weaver. More proof to shred their no-support narrative. She paused, her expression softening for just a fraction of a second. This next part is personal. You need to protect yourself. Now, as soon as you leave here, I want you to call all 3 credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Place a full fraud alert and a credit freeze on your file. If Greg was willing to forge your signature on a county document, he is willing to open a credit card in your name. We lock the gates before he tries. I nodded, my hand already reaching for my phone to set a reminder. One last thing, Allison said. You mentioned a friend, an accountant. Priya, I said. My best friend. She's an internal auditor at a tech firm. Perfect. You are too close to it. Ask Priya to look into G&T Legal Services. From an objective, professional standpoint, what can she find? Invoices, bank transfers, business registration details, anything that ties it directly to Greg and proves it's not a legitimate legal service. I felt a pang of guilt, dragging my friend into this, but Allison was right. I was too close. Okay, I said. I can ask her. This is the most important part, Daniela, Allison said, leaning forward. You will do all of this in complete silence. You will not call your mother. You will not text your sister. You will not confront Greg. You will respond to your mother's email, and you will be cheerful. You will say, "Sounds great, Mom. I will print it out and see you on the 24th. You will buy the prime rib. You will bring the pecan pies. You will act, for all intents and purposes, like the compliant, dutiful daughter they expect. You want me to just Walk in, knowing what they are doing? Yes, Allison said, her voice hard. They are building their own gallows. The least we can do is hand them the rope. Their entire plan hinges on a single moment of psychological pressure. They are counting on your discomfort, on your fear of making a scene at Christmas. We are going to take that expectation and turn it against them. Let them walk into the room. Let them pull out the papers. Let them set the scene. We will be waiting. Let them expose their entire intent. Live on December 24th. The strategy was brilliant. It was terrifying. It was exactly what I needed. I left Allison's office and walked into the bright winter sunlight. My path clear. My anger was gone, replaced by a cold, crystalline focus. I spent the afternoon on the phone. I placed the credit freezes. The bureaus were efficient. The automated voices walking me through the process, locked. I called my insurance company. The letter of payment history would be emailed to me within 48 hours. Done. I filed the county records request through Allison's office portal. Submitted. That evening, I called Priya. I kept my voice even as I laid out the facts. I sent her the transaction history for G&T Legal. "Danny," she breathed, her voice tight with fury. These are felonies. This is fraud. This is evil." "I know," I said. "I just need to know what it is, objectively." "Consider it done," she said. "I'll run a full workup. Shell Company Forensics is my favorite." That night, alone in my mother's quiet house, I disabled the alarm, opened the main security panel, and followed the cryptic instructions from Allison's IT specialist. I plugged in my laptop, ran a command line prompt, and extracted the raw audio file. Complete with its unique hash code, I saved it to a new, encrypted drive. Then, I sat at the kitchen table and began to write. "My name is Daniela Weaver," I typed. "I, being of sound mind, do hereby swear and affirm the following." I wrote for hours. I detailed the first panicked phone call 6 years ago. I listed every tax payment, every insurance premium. I attached the bank statements. I attached the scanned copies of old, desperate emails from my mother. I detailed the $90,000 difference between my salary and my take-home pay over the last 4 years. I described my frugal life, juxtaposed with the vacations Tanya and Greg took. The affidavit was not emotional. It was a ledger of facts, a balance sheet of my devotion. 2 days later, Priya called back. "Okay, I have it," she said. "G&T Legal Services is a single-member LLC, registered agent, Greg Fairchild, standard, but the address he listed for the business? It's a UPS store mailbox, classic shell tactic. But here's the kicker. The bank account that cashed those $500 checks? It's not a business account. I pulled the routing numbers. It's a personal savings account at a credit union. The account holders are listed as Gregory Fairchild and Tanya Fairchild. It's their vacation fund." "They were paying themselves," I whispered. "They were paying themselves," she confirmed, "from an account you forgot existed." I thanked her, my voice hollow. I added her findings to the file. The plan was in motion. The pieces were all moving. I replied to my mother's email. "Hi, Mom. That sounds great. I'm so glad Greg is helping you with that. I've been swamped at Northwind, but I will definitely print it out and bring it with me. Can't wait to see everyone. I'll pick up the good wine. Love, Daniela." I bought the prime rib. I ordered the wine. I practiced my smile in the mirror. On my laptop, I closed the Noel countdown spreadsheet. I had a new name for the operation. A folder on my encrypted drive that now held the affidavit, the audio hash, the insurance letters, the credit reports, and Priya's shell company analysis. I named it Project Evergreen, an evergreen con, met with an evergreen defense. Christmas was coming, and I was, for the first time in my life, truly ready for it. The preparations for Project Evergreen were methodical, precise, and completely sterile. They were a comfort, a series of logical tasks that grounded me. But as the days ticked down, another, older script began to play in my head. The psychological one, the one that had been written for me since birth. I remember one Christmas when I was 9. I had spent 3 months, almost a quarter of my young life, working on my mother's gift. It was a small wooden box, salvaged from my father's workshop, that I had painstakingly sanded and shellacked. I used model paint to create what I thought was a beautiful, intricate mosaic of forget-me-nots on the lid. My fingers were raw from the sandpaper and stained with blue paint. Tanya, who was 12, had simply pointed at a 10-speed bicycle in the Sears catalog. Christmas morning, I presented my box. "Oh, Daniela," Vera said, turning it over in her hands. "That's very resourceful." She set it on the side table, next to a stack of mail. Then, the main event. Greg, not my Greg, but a high school boyfriend of Tanya's, helped wheel in the bicycle. It was gleaming red, with a huge bow. Tanya shrieked. My mother cried. She actually cried. "Oh, Tanya," she gasped. "Look at you. You look like a movie star on that." I sat on the floor, my blue-stained fingers gripping the cheap wrapping paper, and I learned a fundamental lesson. My effort was resourceful. Tanya's desire was an event, my gift, which cost me everything I had. Time, effort, a cut on my thumb, was invisible. Her gift, which cost only money, was a spectacle. My mother reinforced this lesson daily. Vera never used words like smart or capable for me. Those words implied agency, something she seemed to reserve for my sister. Instead, I was practical. I was thrifty. I was good at saving. "Tanya is the pretty one," she would confide in her friends over the phone, unaware I was listening. "She's got the personality. She just connects with people. She will go far." And of me? Daniela? "Oh, she's the rock. So sensible with her money. She'll be fine. She's the one who will always be okay." It was not a compliment. It was a life sentence. It was my casting. Being fine and okay meant I required no attention, no celebration, no protection. It meant I was the designated caregiver, the built-in support system. Tanya was the project, the investment, the performance. I was the infrastructure. Infrastructure is only ever noticed when it fails. When I won the Chancellor's Scholarship to the University of Colorado, I was ecstatic. It was a full ride. 4 years. I had worked tirelessly, sacrificing my high school social life for a perfect GPA and test scores. I ran home, clutching the acceptance letter. My mother read it. She smiled, a brief, tight smile. "Well, that's wonderful, Daniela." She put the letter on the counter. "That will certainly be a big help. It's one less burden for the house." There was no party. There was no proud phone call to relatives. My achievement was not an achievement. It was a debt reduction. It was me, once again, being good at saving, this time, saving her the cost of tuition. The pattern was set. The first year I was at Northwind Supply Systems, barely 22 years old, and navigating my first corporate job. The call came, the one I now recognized as the template for all the others. "Danny, honey, I am in such a terrible bind," she whispered, her voice thick with manufactured panic. "The property tax bill, I just forgot. It's delinquent. They are talking about liens. I'm so embarrassed. Tanya and Greg can't help. They're starting their new business." I was horrified. A lien? Losing the house? How much, Mom? The amount was staggering to me then. $3,000. It was nearly all of my meager savings. "Oh, Daniela, you are a lifesaver," she cried when I agreed to transfer the money. "This is just a temporary loan. I promise. Just until I get my retirement account sorted out, I will pay you back by the end of the quarter." The end of the quarter came and went. The end of the year. The money was never mentioned. When I tried to bring it up, gently, she looked at me with wounded eyes. "Daniela, are you billing me? After all I have done?" I never asked again. And 6 months later, the next call came. The insurance, then the roof, then the regular, steady siphoning. The loan became an allowance, became an obligation. I had learned my lesson. My life, the one I built in Boulder, was a direct reaction to this upbringing. My financial discipline was not a virtue, it was a survival mechanism. My spreadsheets and savings accounts were a fortress. I built walls of liquidity to protect myself from the emotional and financial chaos of my family. I kept low expectations, not because I was a pessimist, but because disappointment was a tax I was no longer willing to pay. I expected nothing, so I was never let down. And this Project Evergreen, was not what they thought. If Tanya or my mother imagined my motive, they would assume it was emotional. They would see it as a daughter's spiteful, tear-filled outburst. They could understand that. They could manipulate that. They were wrong. This was not about lashing out. I had no desire to match their emotional violence. I did not want to scream at my mother or make Tanya cry. That was their language, messy, imprecise, manipulative. My language was data. This was not revenge. It was an audit. It was a market correction. I was not seeking to inflict pain. I was seeking to establish truth. I was taking the role they had assigned me. The sensible one. The rock. And I was going to embody it so completely that it shattered their entire reality. They had built their world on the foundation of Daniela will handle it. I was simply not handling it. I was handing it back. That is not to say I was not afraid. I was terrified, not of them, but of the role I was about to play. The betrayer, the ungrateful daughter, the one who ruined Christmas. They would use that phrase. I could already hear it. How could you do this? On Christmas Eve? They would wield the holiday like a weapon, using the cultural expectation of peace, forgiveness, and family unity to paint me as a monster. I would be the Grinch, the Scrooge, the one who brought lawyers and spreadsheets to a dinner table laden with prime rib and pecan pie. My entire life, I had been programmed to avoid this exact conflict, to be the peacemaker, to absorb the cost, pay the bill, and keep the fragile ecosystem of my mother's happiness intact. But my anchor was stronger than my fear. My anchor was the $84,000. My anchor was the forged D. Weaver. My anchor was the cold, clear voice of Allison Pike, a voice that reflected my own internal logic. Calm justice, clear boundaries. This was not a betrayal of the family. This was the preservation of myself. I closed my personal journal. My last entry, written the night I finalized the plan with Allison, was simple. The Christmas gift I'm giving myself this year is freedom. Project Evergreen was locked. The encrypted drive was in my work bag. Allison had her copy. Priya had her copy. The affidavit was filed. The letters were sent. Now, all that was left was the performance. I did exactly as I was told. I called the butcher and confirmed the order for the prime rib. I called the specialty grocer and ordered 3 pecan pies and a Yule log cake. I was not going to bake. I was outsourcing. I was delegating. I was already acting like a manager, not a servant. I bought the expensive wine, 2 bottles of a Pinot Noir I knew Greg liked, let them think I was trying to please them. I spent my last evening at my mother's house before the 24th doing my assigned task, hanging the Christmas lights on the front porch, the house I was paying for. It was cold, the air sharp and still. I stepped back onto the lawn to look at my work. The lights were bright, a cheerful, defiant glow against the deep Colorado twilight. They were a beacon. In the past, I had always done this task with a quiet resentment, another chore for the sensible daughter. But this year, it felt different. The lights were not for them. They were not for my mother's neighborhood reputation. They were a promise. They were the lights of the operating theater, bright and sterile, illuminating the truth. I plugged in the final strand. The whole house lit up. "No one," I whispered to the cold air, my breath pluming in front of me. "No one signs for me anymore." I went inside, my spine straight, my resolve as hard and cold as the frozen ground. I was ready. The week before Christmas became a blur of silent, parallel activity. On the surface, I was the dutiful daughter, finalizing menus and confirming my travel time. In reality, I was the general of a one-woman army, marshaling my assets for a 5:30 p.m. engagement on December 24th. The first shot was fired, as always, via the family group text. My phone buzzed. It was Tanya. "Hey everyone, just a reminder to be at Mom's a little early on the 24th. We have to sign those tax papers for her before dinner. Want to get it out of the way so we can all relax." Her use of "we" was masterful, inclusive, a team sport. I typed my reply, my thumb steady. "Sounds good. Tanya, I'm picking up the bûche de Noël and the wine. Should be there by 4. I acknowledged the time, but not the task. I was the supplier, the provider, the role they had written for me. I would play it to the hilt. A minute later, a new text came in. This one was private, just from Greg. His style was different, man to man. Or in this case, man to simple-minded spinster. "Hey Daniela, Greg here. Just wanted to let you know I've handled everything for those forms on the 24th. I even got a mobile notary to come to the house so we don't have to go anywhere. Should take 5 minutes, tops." The arrogance. I've handled everything. He saw himself as the family patriarch, the deal-maker. He saw me as a logistical problem to be managed. This was my opening. I had to feign the exact kind of bureaucratic ignorance he expected from me. I typed back, "Oh, wow. Greg, a mobile notary? That's so efficient. Thanks for setting it up. Silly question. But will I need my original driver's license? Or is a copy okay? Just want to make sure I have the right ID." The 3 dots of him typing appeared almost instantly. He was taking the bait. "Good question. Just bring your original license. The notary has to see it in person to verify your signature. Standard procedure." I set my phone down, a cold smile touching my lips. Standard procedure for a real signature. "Greg, not for the pixelated forgery you already filed with the county. Thank you for confirming, in writing, that your entire plan requires my live, verified signature. You are so focused on the money you have forgotten the details, and the details are where I live." As if on cue. My mother, the soft hand in this 3-person con, followed up. An email landed in my inbox. "Hi, sweetie. Just resending that PDF Greg's team prepared. Please remember to print it and bring it. It's the only hard copy. Love you." The lie was so bald. The only hard copy, as if they did not have a stack of them, ready to go. I forwarded the email to Allison. "They're confirming the plan. See attached." Allison's call came 5 minutes later. No pleasantries. "Daniela, I've analyzed this new version. It's worse. I've marked 7 distinct clauses that are legally toxic. Clause 3.1 removes all financial liability from the agent. That's Greg. Clause 4.2 gives him the right to gift any and all assets to any party, including himself. Clause 7.1 explicitly waives your right, and your mother's right, to contest any transactions he makes. This is not a tax form. It's a blank check. It is a pure theft document." "She asked me to print it," I said, my voice flat. "Then you will print it," Allison said. "But we're going to weaponize it. Send the file to your friend Priya, now." I did. Priya, my brilliant, furious friend, knew exactly what to do. "Oh, I love this," she said, her voice vibrating with a dark professional glee. "I have a program for this. I am embedding a forensic, invisible watermark into the document's metadata. It's a unique digital hash, and better, I am adding a microdot pattern, invisible to the naked eye, across the physical page. If they try to alter the printout you bring, or swap it with a different one they printed, we will know. We will be able to prove in court, definitively, which document was presented to you." 20 minutes later, she sent the file back. I printed it at the Northwind office. It looked perfectly normal. I folded it and put it in my handbag. A time bomb, set for Christmas Eve. Now for the social traps. A legal victory was not enough. I needed a social one. I needed them to be exposed, not just to the law, but to their own world. My target? Mrs. Bowman. Mrs. Bowman lived 2 doors down from my mother and had for 40 years. She was the neighborhood's undisputed moral compass, the retired president of the local historical society, and the one person whose opinion my mother truly feared. Vera simultaneously gossiped to Mrs. Bowman and was terrified of Mrs. Bowman. I bought a small poinsettia and walked to her house. She opened the door, her face breaking into a warm, genuine smile. "Daniela Weaver! Goodness, look at you, all grown up and so professional. How is your mother?" She's Vera," I said with a laugh, handing her the plant. "And she's so excited for Christmas. Listen, Mrs. Bowman, I know this is incredibly last minute, but it would mean the world to me. And I know to her, if you would join us for Christmas Eve dinner, just for an hour or so." She looked surprised. "Oh, Vera didn't—" "It's a surprise," I cut in smoothly. "I'm doing it. I'm bringing a Yule log and some lovely wine. I feel like she hasn't seen you properly in ages. And I'd just love to have you there, as a little surprise gift for her. We're so rarely all together." Mrs. Bowman beamed. The idea of being a surprise gift clearly delighted her. "A surprise? Oh, Vera will be so touched. How thoughtful. Daniela, what a wonderful daughter. Yes, of course. What time should I pop over?" I held my breath. "Would 5:30 be okay? We're doing a little toast and maybe exchanging a few gifts right before the meal." "5:30 is perfect," she said, patting my arm. "I'll see you then, dear, and I won't say a word." I walked back to my car, my heart hammering. Checkmate. My next call was to Allison. "Mrs. Bowman is confirmed for 5:30. She's the social witness." "Excellent." Allison's voice was crisp. "My counter-move is also confirmed. I have retained an independent, bonded notary public. His name is Mr. Fields. He is a retired police officer with 25 years of service. He will arrive at your mother's home at 5:35 p.m. precisely. He has been instructed to introduce himself as the notary retained by Daniela Weaver's legal counsel to observe the signing. He will be wearing a body cam, which is perfectly legal in Colorado for a notary performing their duties, especially when potential fraud has been alleged. He will not engage. He will only observe, record, and be an unimpeachable witness." A retired cop with a body cam, Greg's mobile notary was about to be severely outclassed. The night before I was due at my mother's, I sat at my desk and prepared my gifts. No bright paper, no ribbons, just 3 plain 9x12 manila envelopes. Envelope 1, for Vera. Inside, I placed a single-page, itemized summary of the $84,312. Next to it, I placed a copy of the fraudulent tax application she and Greg had filed, the one claiming no family support. Envelope 2, for Tanya, I placed a printed, verbatim transcript of their phone call. The words, "I don't want to spend Christmas with that loser," were highlighted in yellow. Behind it, I put Priya's full analysis of the G&T Legal Services Shell Company, showing the deposits into their personal vacation account. Envelope 3, for Greg, I placed a high-resolution printout of the forged D. Weaver signature from the county website. Next to it, I placed a color photocopy of my actual driver's license. The difference was stark and insulting. Behind that, I put my alibi, the hotel folio and expense reports from my Chicago business trip, dated June 14th. I created a 4th envelope, a master copy for Allison, which she already had. I packed the 3 gifts in my overnight bag, next to the watermarked PDF. My last stop, on December 23rd, was my mother's house. I was dropping off the wine and the non-perishables. As expected, she was out getting her hair done for the big day. I was alone. I went to the living room. It was beautiful. The room was dominated by the huge, fragrant fir tree, dripping with lights and 30 years of ornaments. It was the perfect stage. I had to justify this next step. Legally, in my own head, I pay the insurance on this property. I pay the taxes. I have contributed $84,000 to its upkeep. I am, in financial reality, a cohabitant. I am a host. My consent is given. I had 2 small, high-resolution cameras. They looked like simple black USB chargers. The first one went into the wall socket directly behind the Christmas tree. Its tiny lens peeked out from between two thick, tinsel-laden branches. Its view was perfect. The entire sofa, the armchair, and the coffee table where I knew Greg would place his briefcase. The second camera went into the outlet by the hallway entrance, angled to capture anyone coming in the front door. It would capture Greg's notary. It would capture Mrs. Bowman. It would capture Allison's notary. I connected them both to my phone, checked the feeds, crystal clear audio and video. I stood back. The room was warm, festive, and perfectly staged. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care. The lights on the tree glittered, their cheerful glow reflecting off the dark, patient lens of the hidden camera. All that was left was to set the final piece of bait. I took out my phone and texted the family group. "Hey, I have a little gift presentation I'd like to do right before we eat. It's something special for Mom, Tanya, and Greg. Could we plan on doing that around 5:30 p.m., before the roast is ready?" My mother's reply was instant, a string of heart emojis. "Of course, sweetie. How lovely. 5:30 it is. I can't wait." The time was set, 5:30 p.m. The notary appointment, Mrs. Bowman's arrival, the gift exchange, Allison's counter-notary. The stage was set, the actors were confirmed, the beautiful sparkling Christmas tree, the symbol of our family's warmth, was now the perfect backdrop for the truth. I arrived at 4 p.m. on December 24th. The house was blazing with the lights I had hung, a festive beacon against the gray afternoon. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of pine and the rich, savory smell of the prime rib already slow roasting in the oven. My mother, Vera, fussed over the table, her face flushed with a brittle, high-strung cheer. "Daniela, sweetie, you're here. Let me take that." Tanya and Greg arrived minutes later. Tanya's performance was breathtaking. She rushed to me, pulling me into a hug that was as fragrant as it was false. "Danny, you made it. Oh, that bûche de Noël looks divine. You always find the best things." She had never, in 32 years, complimented my taste in anything. The sweetness was so saccharine it was acidic. "Hi, Tanya. Merry Christmas." Greg was all confident charm, clapping me on the shoulder as he passed, carrying his sleek leather briefcase. "Danny, good to see you, Mom. That roast smells incredible." He placed the briefcase on the coffee table, right in front of the Christmas tree, right in view of the camera. For an hour, we played the part. We drank the wine I brought. We listened to Christmas carols. The performance was flawless. At 5:15 p.m., Greg checked his watch. "Okay, folks," he said, rubbing his hands together with a practiced, "let's get this done" air. He clicked open his briefcase and pulled out a fresh stack of papers, not my watermarked copy, and a polished, expensive-looking pen. "Before we get too comfortable, let's get this quick bit of business out of the way. Just that tax formality we talked about." "Oh, yes, the papers," Vera chimed in, wiping her hands on her apron. "Let's get that done." The doorbell rang. It was 5:20 p.m., early. "Ah, that'll be our guy," Greg said, standing. "I'll get it." "I'll come with you," I said, my voice light. I followed him to the entryway, my heart a cold, steady drum. As Greg opened the door, a nervous-looking man in a rumpled suit stood on the porch, fumbling with a clipboard. "Here for Weaver?" he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "Yes, come on in," Greg said, stepping back. As the man stepped into the hall, I moved, not to block him, but to stand directly in his path. Allison Pike had been clear on this. I had the right to vet anyone performing a legal service in a home I financially maintained. "Good evening," I said. "Before we begin, may I see your state commission and your driver's license, please?" The man looked up, startled. "What?" Greg laughed, a high, nervous sound. "Danny, what are you doing? He's a professional. Let's not hassle the guy." "It's standard procedure," I said, my voice firm, borrowing the phrase he had given me. "Your ID and commission, please, and your state-mandated notary badge. I don't see it." The man flushed. It's in the car. It's just a quick signing. And your commission? I pressed, holding out my hand. He fumbled in his wallet and pulled out a card, handing it to me. I looked at it, the name, and the expiration date. June, 6 months ago. Greg, I said, my voice ringing out, loud enough for everyone in the living room to hear. His commission is expired. He is not legally licensed to notarize anything. Greg's face went white. That's impossible. It must be a mistake. Let me see that. He lunged for the card, but I held it up. An expired license isn't a mistake, Greg. It's a crime. The man looked like he was about to be sick. I was just... You need to leave, I said, opening the front door for him. Now. He practically ran. I shut the door, leaving Greg standing in the hallway, his face a mask of fury and panic. Daniela, what the hell do you think you're... The doorbell rang again. I looked at my watch. It was 5:30 p.m., precisely. I opened the door. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a dark, impeccable suit stood on the porch. He looked like he could be a Secret Service agent. Mr. Fields, I said, thank you for coming. Ms. Weaver. He nodded, stepping inside. He turned to the stunned room. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mr. Fields. I am an independent, bonded notary public, retained by Ms. Daniela Weaver's legal counsel. For the record, I am informing all parties that this interaction is being recorded for accuracy and security. He tapped the small, glowing blue light on his lapel. The body cam. Vera looked at me, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Daniela? Legal counsel? A camera? What is going on? Her voice cracked. Sign? Just sign the paper for me. Can you? Please, let's not ruin Christmas. You're right. Mom, I walked past her, into the center of the living room. We shouldn't, Greg. I brought the document you asked me to print. I pulled the watermarked PDF from my bag and held it up. But I also brought my gifts. I wanted to give them out before we signed anything. I walked to my overnight bag, which I had placed by the hearth. I took out the 3 plain manila envelopes. The room was dead silent, save for the faint sound of Silent Night playing softly from the smart speaker. I handed the first envelope to Vera. For you, Mom. I handed the second to Tanya, who looked at it as if it were a snake. Tanya. I handed the third to Greg. Greg. They just stared at them. Go on, I said. Open them. It's just a little family history. Vera's hands were shaking so badly she could barely open the clasp. She slid out the top sheet, the spreadsheet, the $84,000 total at the bottom, then the county filing, the box checked, no family support. She made a small, choking sound. Daniela, this is... Tanya tore hers open. Her eyes scanned the transcript. The word loser jumped off the page. Her face flushed a deep, ugly red. You recorded us? You recorded a private conversation? Was it private? I asked. Or was it a business meeting? Greg's was last. He saw the side-by-side comparison, the blurry, insulting forgery, his Chicago alibi, his professional mask vaporized. He was sweating. This is a technical glitch, Tanya snapped, her voice rising, pointing at the G&T legal analysis. That's a complete misunderstanding. A technical glitch, I repeated. And the forged D. Weaver on the county website. Greg, is that a technical glitch too? Or was it just a placeholder like you said? Greg looked from me to Mr. Fields, his eyes darting to the body cam. I don't know what this is. This is harassment. This is slander. The doorbell rang. Vera, moving like a sleepwalker, went to open it. Mrs. Bowman stood on the threshold, beaming, holding a foil-wrapped plate of cookies. Vera, dear, Merry Christmas. Daniela so kindly invited me. She stopped, her smile freezing. She took in the scene. Vera, pale as a ghost. Tanya, vibrating with rage. Greg, sweating through his Christmas sweater. A large, imposing man with a camera on his chest standing by the door. Me, in the center of the room, holding my phone. "Oh my," Mrs. Bowman said, her hand fluttering to her chest. "Am I interrupting?" "No, Mrs. Bowman," I said, my voice clear and calm. "Please, come in. You're right on time. We're just having a family discussion about public records." Mrs. Bowman's eyes sharpened. "Public records?" "Yes," I said. "We were just discussing the importance of integrity in our county filings. Greg and my mother filed a document claiming she had no financial support, and we were also discussing the legal ramifications of forgery." Mrs. Bowman looked at Greg, her warm, neighborly expression gone, replaced by something cold and appraising. "Forgery. Mr. Fairchild? That's a very serious word. The integrity of our public trust is, well, it's everything." "It's a misunderstanding," Greg almost shouted. "This is slander." "Is it?" I asked. I looked at Tanya. "You said the transcript was out of context. Maybe you're right." I held up my phone. I pressed play, and I turned the volume all the way up. The tinny, sharp sound of Tanya's voice filled the silent, horrified room. I don't want to spend Christmas with that loser. Don't let her ruin this holiday." And then, my mother's voice, the final, damning sentence. "Just until it is done, then we cut her off." I stopped the recording. Mrs. Bowman's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock, fixed on Vera. Vera looked like she had been shot. Greg and Tanya were frozen, their lies exposed in the most brutal, undeniable way. The warm, festive air in the room didn't just cool, it instantly vaporized, replaced by an icy, absolute vacuum. The only sound was the faint hum of the oven. I looked at the shattered faces of my family. "The holiday, as you planned it," I said, my voice quiet but carrying in the dead silence, "is over. The truth is here instead." The silence that followed the recording was absolute. It was a perfect, crystalline void, heavier than any sound. The recording of Silent Night had faded out, leaving only the faint, steady tick of the mantel clock. Greg, Tanya, and Vera were statues, their faces frozen in the ugly moment of exposure. Mrs. Bowman, her plate of cookies still in her hand, looked at my mother with an expression of profound, bottomless disappointment. Mr. Fields, the notary, stood by the door, a silent, recording sentinel. I was the only one who moved. I walked to the coffee table and picked up the watermarked, poisonous PDF that I had printed. "Before you claim that audio was out of context, let's talk about this." I held it up. "Greg, you called this a tax formality, a simple paper. My mother begged me to sign it to save the house. I had my legal counsel, Allison Pike, review it." I looked at my mother. "This is not a tax form. Mom, it's a durable financial power of attorney, a document designed to steal your house." "That's a lie," Tanya spat, finding her voice. "We were trying to protect her." "Were you?" I asked, my voice as cold as the glass in my hand. My attorney highlighted 7 specific clauses. Clause 3.1, which removes all legal and financial liability from the agent. Greg. Clause 4.2, which gives Greg the right to gift any and all of your assets, Mom, to any party he chooses, including himself. Clause 7.1, which waives your right, and my right, to ever contest his transactions. I let the paper fall to the table. It is not a document to save the house. It is a document to liquidate it. It's a blank check. My attorney called it a theft document, and she was right. "Daniela," Vera whispered, her hand to her throat. Greg said it was the only way. He said the law was complex?" I finished for her. I turned to Greg. "Let's talk about the law. Greg." I pointed to the manila envelope in his lap, the one with the high-resolution image of the forgery. "This document, The one you filed with the county. The one with my name pasted onto it. I turned to our audience. Mrs. Bowman, Mr. Fields, please bear witness. Greg filed a draft power of attorney with Boulder County, with my signature forged on it. The timestamp is June 14th. Then I looked at Mr. Fields. Mr. Fields, as a licensed notary public, would you be so kind as to inform the room of the standard procedure for notarizing a signature on a document of this nature? Mr. Fields's voice was a deep, steady baritone. It cut through the tension. Colorado state law is explicit. The signer must appear in person before the notary. They must present a valid, unexpired, state-issued photo identification. The notary must witness the signature being physically affixed to the document, a scanned image, a digital paste, or a signature not made in the notary's presence is invalid. It does not meet the legal standard. So, the document Greg filed with the county is fraudulent, I stated. It is not a legally executed document, he confirmed. And what about the notary Greg brought here tonight? I continued, my gaze locking on Greg. The man who just fled? His commission expired 6 months ago. Fleeing a notarization appointment and failing to maintain one's official journal are serious violations. Greg, but notarizing a document with an expired license? That's a criminal offense. I didn't check his credentials, Greg stammered, his face slick with sweat. I used an online service. It's their fault. Was it an online service, Greg? I asked. Or was it just a friend you thought you could bribe? This is insane, Tanya shouted, standing up. You loser, you set us up. You bring these strangers into our mother's home on Christmas Eve to attack us. I didn't bring strangers. Tanya, I brought facts. I pointed to her envelope. Like the G&T Legal Services analysis. Those were the consultation fees you and Greg were charging my mother. But G&T Legal is a shell company, registered to a UPS mailbox. And my accountant, Priya, she traced the funds. They were not for legal advice. They were direct deposits into your and Greg's personal vacation account. You were stealing from your own mother, and you were using my money, from my old joint account, to do it. Tanya's face went from rage to a flat, dead white. She had not known I could trace it. And you, Mom, I turned to her. She flinched. This is the document you signed. I held up the tax relief application, the one where you swore to the county that you had no immediate family members currently providing financial support. You swore you had no one. I pulled the thick, sworn affidavit from my own bag. This is my affidavit, $84,312.51. That is what I have paid, over 6 years, to keep this house, the insurance, the taxes, the new roof. I attached every single bank statement. You did not just lie to the county. Mom, you lied about me. This was the moment. Vera dissolved. It was not a few tears. It was a complete, hysterical collapse. I had to, she shrieked, the sound tearing through the room. I had to. Greg said we were going to lose the house. They were going to take it. I did it all to keep the house, my house. I did it for the family. No, Mom, I said, my voice cutting through her sobs, devoid of all pity. You didn't. The room stopped. I pulled the full title report and the county tax records. The account was in perfect standing. It was not delinquent. There was no foreclosure notice. There was no lien. Do you know why there was no notice? Mom? Because I was paying the bills. You were never in danger of losing the house. Not once. That was the lie. That was the lie Greg told you. And the lie you told me. To create the emergency. To create the pressure. To make me sign. Mrs. Bowman, who had been silent, let out a small, horrified breath. Vera, is that true? Vera just sobbed, her face in her hands. Tanya saw it, the entire intricate con collapsing in on itself. She did what she always did. She turned on her partner. This was you, she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at Greg. This was all you. You and your stupid failing businesses. You told me it was legal. You told me it was asset management. You told me she wouldn't even notice. You pushed this. You did this to my mother." Greg, cornered, reverted to bluster. It's complex," he yelled back. "You don't understand corporate law. I was restructuring. I was protecting this family's assets from creditors. I was helping." "Helping?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The room fell silent again. "By forging my name?" I held up one last piece of paper. "This is a confirmation I received from the Boulder County Clerk's office, from the notary calendar. It confirms an appointment was scheduled for today, December 24th, at 5:30 p.m., an appointment made in my name, for my signature, an appointment I never made." I let the paper drift onto the coffee table. The case was closed. They were all broken. Vera, a weeping mess. Tanya, shaking with rage and fear. Greg, a sweating, cornered animal. I looked at them, one by one, the trinity that had defined my life. "This is not a family argument," I said, my voice clear and final. "This is over. The arrangement you all depended on, the one where I am the silent, sensible ATM, is finished. The lies are finished. The theft is finished." I took a breath. From tonight, new boundaries begin. I walked to my bag and pulled out the last set of documents. I placed them on the coffee table, next to Greg's expensive, useless pen. "My attorney, Allison Pike, prepared these," I said. "She anticipated that you would not want this evening's revelations to become a matter for the district attorney, not yet." I laid out 3 copies. "This is an agreement not to contact and not to financially interfere. It is a legally binding contract. It states, very simply, that none of you, not you, Mom, not you, Tanya, and not you, Greg, will ever contact me again about any financial matter of any kind, ever. It states you will never again use my name, my signature, my credit, or my identity on any document, public or private. It states that any attempt at communication must go through my lawyer's office. Full stop." I pushed Greg's pen toward the center of the table. "If you sign this, tonight, I will instruct my attorney to hold the criminal complaints for the forgery, the perjury, and the conspiracy to commit fraud in abeyance. If you refuse to sign, Mr. Fields here, and his body cam, will be my first witnesses at the Boulder Police Department. Tonight." Vera looked up, her face a ruin of tears and makeup. "Daniela, no, you can't. I'm your mother. You can't." "Sign it. Mom," I said. My voice was not angry. It was empty. "The daughter you thought I was is gone. She's the loser you cut off. I'm just the one with the evidence." I looked at Greg. "The pen you brought for me? It's for you, all of you. You wanted a signature to get it done. Here's your chance." Greg's hand, which had been reaching for the pen, froze. Tanya's mouth opened, but no sound came out. My mother's sobs hitched in her throat. The only person in the room who seemed unfazed was Mr. Fields, who simply stood, a silent, recording pillar of the law. The pen lay on the table, a simple, elegant tool, the one Greg had brought to sign away my mother's life. Now, it was the instrument of their own judgment. Greg looked at the paper, then at me. His face was a contortion of disbelief and pure, undiluted hatred. You can't be serious. This is blackmail. This is..." The doorbell rang. The sound, sharp and cheerful, a festive Jingle Bells chime, was so utterly out of place that it was violent. Everyone started. Vera looked up, her eyes wild with a new, different kind of terror. "Who is that? Who else did you invite? Daniela, who is that?" "I didn't invite anyone else," I said. "Mr." Fields moved smoothly from the doorway and opened the door. 2 people stood on the porch, a man in a county-issued winter parka, holding a badge wallet, and a woman in a similar uniform, holding a clipboard. They were not police. They were, in some ways, worse. Good evening, the man said, his voice calm and professional. He looked past Mr. Fields, his eyes scanning the room, taking in the scene, the weeping mother, the enraged sister, the sweating man, the body cam. I'm Investigator Karras, Boulder County Assessor's Office, Special Investigations. This is Ms. Romano. We're here regarding a formal complaint filed about this property. He looked at my mother. Are you Vera Weaver? Vera could only nod, her hand over her mouth. And you are? He looked at Greg. Greg Fairchild. I'm her son-in-law. Mr. Fairchild, Karras said, his eyes now sharp. We received a formal, preemptive warning from a law firm, Pike & Associates, alleging several counts of fraudulent activity connected to this address. Specifically, the filing of forged documents and an attempt to misuse a notary public's credentials. He looked at Mr. Fields. You must be the notary from the complaint. Mr. Fields, yes, he replied, retained by counsel. Karras nodded, a small sigh of understanding. Right. Well, our office was also alerted to a notary who was scheduled to be here at 5:30 p.m., one Mr. Arthur Jensen. He fled, I said, my voice cutting through the room. About 10 minutes ago, when I asked for his commission. Karras looked at Ms. Romano. He fled. Make a note. He looked back at me. And you are? Daniela Weaver. Ms. Pike is my attorney. Ms. Weaver, right. We have your name all over these files. Karras's gaze was neutral, but penetrating. Mr. Jensen, did he, by chance, leave anything behind in his haste? Greg's eyes widened. He half turned toward the hallway, where the rumpled man had stood. His journal, Mr. Fields said. He walked to the small entryway table and picked up a black official-looking logbook. He dropped it when he ran. I secured it. He handed it to Investigator Karras. Karras opened the book. He and Romano looked at it, their heads bent together. Well, Karras murmured. Here's the entry. Weaver, Vera, power of attorney, December 24th. He then turned a few pages. And here is his state notary seal. Stamped right on the front page. Ms. Romano? She pulled a small magnifying glass from her pocket. Yes, commission number 2018-4949, expiration date, June 30th, this year. This seal has been expired for nearly 6 months. Greg made a small, strangled sound. So, Karras said, snapping the book shut, we have an admission of an attempt to use an expired notary seal. That is a criminal matter. We'll be taking this as evidence. He handed the book to Romano, who slipped it into a large evidence bag. Tanya, who had been silent, seemed to finally reboot. Okay, this is ridiculous, she said, grabbing her purse. This is a family disagreement. This is just a misunderstanding. We have to go. Greg, we're leaving. She started for the door. Ma'am, I would not do that if I were you, Karras said, his voice not rising, but stopping her cold. You are Tanya Fairchild? Yes. Your name is on the G&T Legal Services, LLC, the one receiving payments from Mrs. Weaver's accounts. Tanya froze. And you, Mr. Fairchild? Karras continued. We have a copy of the draft POA you filed, the one with Ms. Daniela Weaver's signature, and we also have the PDF you intended to have signed tonight. We received it from Ms. Pike. We are going to need the original of that document, the one you brought. He pointed to the stack of papers on the coffee table. Greg did not move. Romano stepped forward. Sir, I can either take the papers from the table, or we can get a warrant and take the entire briefcase. Your choice. Slowly, his hands trembling, Greg pushed the papers across the table. Romano photographed them, then bagged them. Then, Vera did the last thing I expected. The pressure was too much. The carefully constructed world of lies shattered, and everything came out. It wasn't just the taxes, she suddenly wailed, her voice cracking. It was the flood. It was the flood last year. The basement. The water! Karis looked at her. The disaster aide, Mrs. Weaver, from FEMA. Greg said, I could get more if I said I had no one, she sobbed, confessing to the room, to the investigators, to God. That I had no support. That Daniela. That she gave me nothing. I just signed what he told me to sign. I just wanted to fix the basement. Karis and Romano exchanged a look. This was bigger than they thought. This was not just county fraud. This was federal fraud. Karis sighed. Mrs. Weaver, Mr. and Mrs. Fairchild. This is no longer a simple discussion. He pulled out a small notepad. I am not here to make an arrest tonight. It is Christmas Eve. But this is now an active investigation by the Boulder County Assessor's Office and, it appears, the Office of the Inspector General. We will be taking your statements. For the next hour, my Christmas Eve was transformed into a series of depositions. My mother, sister, and brother-in-law were separated. Karis took Greg in the dining room. Romano took Tanya in the kitchen. Mrs. Bowman, God bless her, sat with my mother on the sofa, as Vera gave her weeping, incoherent, and deeply incriminating statement. Mr. Fields and I stood by the fireplace. He had turned his body cam off. You did the right thing, Ms. Weaver, he said quietly. At 7:30 p.m., it was over. Karis and Romano, their bags full of evidence and their notebooks full of confessions, stood in the doorway. They handed Vera, Tanya, and Greg each an official, terrifying-looking summons. This is a formal notice of investigation, Karis said, his voice leaving no room for argument. You will be hearing from our office, and likely from federal authorities, after the holiday. I strongly advise you all to retain legal counsel immediately. They left. Mrs. Bowman, her face pale, walked over to me. She touched my arm. Daniela, she said, her voice low and kind. They will say you ruined Christmas, but you did not. She looked over at the shattered trio on the sofa. The truth does not need to shout, my dear. It just needs to be seen. You turned on the light. She squeezed my arm, left her uneaten cookies on the side table, and let herself out. I was alone with them. Mr. Fields was in the hall, writing his final report. The silence was different now. It was the silence of a tomb. Tanya was the first to move. She looked at me, her eyes devoid of rage, just filled with a hollow, desperate fear. Danny, can I talk to you? Alone? For 1 minute, sister to sister. Greg and Vera just stared at the floor. I was curious. What could she possibly say? Fine. The kitchen. We walked into the kitchen, the prime rib, in its roasting pan, sat on the counter, cold. The pecan pies were untouched. Danny, she whispered, her voice breaking. Okay, you're right. It's me. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. This was new, not a lie. The scent of truth. It's not just the vacation fund. That was Greg's stupid idea. It's my credit cards. I have almost $90,000 in consumer debt, maxed out. They're calling me. They're going to sue me. Greg's ventures are all failures. We're broke. Danny, we're going to lose our condo. Her eyes filled with tears, but these were real tears. Tears of pure, selfish panic. I saw the equity in Mom's house, she whispered. I just needed to borrow it, just for a little while, just to pay them off. I was going to pay it back. I needed the POA to get a home equity loan. I was desperate. She finally said it, the whole pathetic, grubby truth. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. The old look, the look my mother used. Help me. You're the sensible one. You're the rock. I looked at her, my sister, the loser, the winner, in the end, just a terrified, incompetent thief. I felt nothing, no pity, no rage, just an ending. Tanya, I said, my voice quiet, you do not need a sister. You need a lawyer. I turned around and walked out of the kitchen. The Christmas dinner was over. Tanya and Greg gathered their things in silence. They did not look at Vera. They did not look at me. They walked out the front door and disappeared. Vera was still on the sofa, curled into a small ball, weeping silently. She looked old. She looked small. I called Allison. "It's done. The investigators came. They have it all." "I know," she said. "Karis just called me. A very productive evening. What about your mother? Daniela? The federal fraud. That's serious." I looked at my mother, a hollowed-out shell. "I won't pursue criminal charges against her for the false support claims," I said. "It's on the record. That's enough." I took a breath. "But the forgery, Allison, Greg's forgery, and the conspiracy, we go forward, full pressure." "Understood," she said. "Good job." I hung up. I went to my laptop and composed an email to Investigator Karis. "Dear Investigator Karis, thank you for your time this evening. As promised, please find attached the encrypted audio file from the home security system, along with the device logs and digital hash code, confirming its authenticity. I am available to cooperate further as needed." I hit send. The house was a wreck of discarded wrapping paper, uneaten food, and emotional shrapnel. The beautiful Christmas tree still glowed, its lights twinkling cheerfully, a silent, glittering witness to the entire implosion. I was hungry. I went into the kitchen. I took out a single plate. I carved one small slice of the cold prime rib. I took one of the pecan pies. I poured myself a glass of the expensive wine I had bought. I ate, standing at the kitchen counter, in the ruins of my family. When I was finished, I washed my plate, I washed my fork, I washed my knife. I put them all away in the drying rack. I kept the wine glass, my glass, in my hand. I walked through the house, turning off the lights, the fireplace, the kitchen, the hallway. I left the Christmas tree on. I went to my childhood bedroom, the one I would never sleep in again. I packed my overnight bag. I walked out the front door, glass in hand, and did not look back. I left my mother alone in the house, with the silent, brightly lit tree, to wait for whatever came next. Christmas was a Tuesday. I took Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off from work. I did not spend those 3 days in a dark room, grieving the family I had lost. I spent them at my desk in my small condo, with a fresh legal pad and a hot cup of coffee, restructuring my entire life. The first act was financial. I logged into my personal banking portal. I navigated to the automatic payments section. I saw the entry, the one I had set up 6 years ago. Vera Weaver, monthly support. It was scheduled to go out on January 1st. I clicked delete. I felt a small, clinical click in my own chest as I confirmed it. It was not a moment of joy, or even anger. It was an audit, a correction, a line item vetoed. My next act was to open a new high-yield savings account at a different bank. I named this account the Freedom Fund. I took the exact amount I would have sent my mother, plus the extra I had been spending on her emergencies, and I transferred it into this new account. It was the first deposit. It was my severance package, paid to myself. That afternoon, I went online, and I did not look at vacation packages. I looked at GMAT prep courses and applications for the Executive MBA program at the University of Denver. The loser, the sensible one, was finally going to invest in her own assets. Life did not wait for my emotional dust to settle. It simply continued. The following Monday, the first workday of the new year, I was called into my vice president's office at Northwind. I felt that old familiar pang of dread, the ingrained instinct that I was about to be asked for an unreasonable sacrifice. My VP, Maria, was a direct, no-nonsense woman I respected. She did not smile. She just slid a single sheet of paper across her desk. "Daniela," she said, "your fourth quarter cost analysis project, the one on the Midwest freight corridor." "Yes," I said, my stomach tightening. "It was exceptional. You identified systemic redundancies in our third-party logistics contracts that no one else has spotted in 5 years. We're implementing your suggestions immediately. The conservative estimate is that your project is going to save this company an estimated $2 million in the next fiscal year alone. I just stared at her. I had completed that project in the 2 weeks between the phone call and Christmas Eve. I had poured all that cold, clarifying rage, all that meticulous, auditing focus, into those spreadsheets. My pain had been profitable. "We're promoting you," Maria said, as if stating a simple fact. "Effective today. You are Senior Procurement Planner for the entire Western region. It's a 15% raise and a new bonus structure." I walked out of her office, my head spinning, the very quality my family had exploited and then mocked. My sensible, practical nature, my ability to see the waste, was the one my career was built on. The difference was that at Northwind, it was valued, it was rewarded. My first, larger paycheck did not go toward a new car or a vacation. It went to Allison Pike, to pay my legal fees in full. My second expenditure was on more legal advice. I hired a quiet, thorough estate planning attorney. "I need a durable power of attorney," I told him, "and an advanced medical directive." The attorney, Mr. Harrison, was a kind, elderly man who looked at me over his spectacles. "Of course, Ms. Weaver, a very prudent decision. Who shall we be naming as your agents? Your mother, perhaps? A sibling?" "No," I said, my voice flat, leaving no room for discussion. "My family is not an option. My primary agent for all financial and medical matters will be my friend, Priya Sharma. My contingent agent will be my lawyer, Allison Pike." He raised an eyebrow, just slightly. "That's very specific." "It is," I said. "I also want to include specific exclusionary language. I want it stated, legally, that Vera Weaver, Tanya Fairchild, and Greg Fairchild are explicitly and irrevocably barred from any access, information, or decision-making power regarding my finances or my health, under any circumstances." "A belt and suspenders approach," he murmured, his pen scratching across the pad. It was more than that. It was an iron wall. I signed the documents the following week. I had finally built a fortress to protect myself, and I had given the only key to the one person in the world I trusted. Allison's advice had been absolute. "We hold the criminal complaints in abeyance, Daniela, but that leverage is useless if you engage. They are terrified. Let them be terrified. You must cut them off. Total information blackout." So I did. I blocked Vera's number. I blocked Tanya's number. I set up an email filter that automatically forwarded any message from their accounts, or Greg's, directly to a paralegal at Allison's firm. I did not see them. I did not read them. For 90 days, my family, as I had known it, ceased to exist. My mother, predictably, could not tolerate the silence. It was a vacuum she had to fill. When her calls went to an automated block and her emails vanished into the void, she turned to the only vector she had left, the neighborhood. "Mrs. Bowman called me," her voice heavy with a reluctance I appreciated. "Daniela, dear," she said, "I am not calling to meddle. Vera has been stopping by my house, almost every day. She is a wreck. Child. She is not well. She just wants you to know that she is so sorry, that she never meant to hurt you, that she was confused by Greg, and she just misses her daughter." The old familiar chord of guilt vibrated in my chest, the instinct to fix, to soothe, to manage her emotions. It was a reflex, as involuntary as breathing. I took a breath, and I stopped it. "Mrs. Bowman," I said, my voice kind but firm. "Thank you for telling me. I appreciate you being a good neighbor to her, but my boundary is not a negotiation. It is a fact. I am not angry at her anymore." And as I said it, I realized it was true. The white-hot rage of Christmas Eve had cooled into something hard and finished. Like fired clay, anger required a relationship. I was, for the first time in my life, indifferent. "She is not to contact me," I finished. "All communication must go through my lawyer. That is the only way." There was a long pause. "I understand," Mrs. Bowman said, and I heard a new, deep respect in her tone. "I will tell her. You take care of yourself. Daniela." The barrier was holding. Tanya's approach was different. It was not emotional. It was tactical. It came, as instructed, through Allison. "Counsel for Mrs. Fairchild has reached out." Allison's email read, "She's in a world of hurt with the federal fraud investigation. She's offering a full civil mediation, wants to make things right." I called Allison. "What she wants," I said, "is for me to ask Investigator Karras to back off." "Of course," Allison said, her voice dry. "But we can use this. What are your terms?" I thought about the $90,000 debt she had admitted to, the money she stole from the G&T fund. "My terms are simple," I said. "First, she signs a legally binding agreement to repay every cent she stole, a payment plan, with interest. Second, she signs a quitclaim deed, forfeiting any and all future claims to my mother's property and assets, effective immediately. She does not get to gamble away the house's equity and inherit it later. She made her choice." Allison's laugh was sharp. "Brutal. I love it. I'll send the offer." A week later, Allison sent me the documents. Faced with a choice between her inheritance and a federal mail fraud charge, Tanya had signed everything. She had officially disinherited herself to avoid prison. Greg, meanwhile, was scrambling. Priya, who had set a Google alert for his name, sent me a link to the state's business filings. G&T Legal Services, LLC, had been formally dissolved. "He thinks that makes it go away," she texted. "Like Karras doesn't already have the bank records." She was right. The investigators were not impressed. They formally subpoenaed 2 full years of financial records from Greg's personal and business accounts. The noose was tightening. My life, for the first time, was quiet. The constant, low-level hum of family anxiety that had been my soundtrack since childhood was gone. The silence was vast. It was unnerving. I found I had to fill it, not with noise, but with intention. I used my new, higher salary to invest in myself. I signed up for a pottery class on Tuesday nights. I was terrible. My first attempts at a bowl were lopsided, collapsing messes. But the feeling of the wet, cool clay spinning under my hands, the intense, physical focus it required, it was a revelation. I was not planning for anyone. I was not managing anyone. I was just making a bowl. On weekends, I took my Subaru up to the foothills. I started hiking. Seriously hiking. I bought real boots and a technical pack. I climbed the steep trails of El Dorado Canyon, my lungs burning in the thin, cold air. I stood on high ridges, looking out over the plains, and the only person I had to answer to was myself. I was learning the profound, critical difference between being lonely, which is what I had been at my mother's Christmas table, and being alone. I was alone, and I was, for the first time, at peace. One evening in March, after a long hike, I sat in my apartment. It felt different. I had bought a real piece of art, a print from a local artist, and a soft, comfortable rug. I opened my email and composed a new message. I sent it to myself. The subject line was, "State of the Union." The body was, "Family is smaller now, respect is bigger, the budget is balanced, the boundaries are holding, you are okay, keep going." I thought about the future. I thought about the holidays. The idea of next Christmas did not fill me with dread. It was just a date on the calendar, December 25th. I decided to reclaim it. I went online and researched local volunteer opportunities. I found a senior center in Boulder that hosted a large Christmas Day dinner for residents and community members who had no family to visit them. I signed up for the longest shift: food prep, serving, and cleanup. Next Christmas, I would not be serving a prime rib to people who despised me. I would be serving a hot meal to people who were simply grateful for the company. My apartment, which I had always seen as a functional, temporary box, felt brighter. I realized it was not the weak spring sun. It was me. The $84,000 weight I had carried for so long was gone. My shoulders felt lighter. My mind felt clearer. I sat on my new rug, in my new, lighter home, and opened my music app. I looked at my old holiday playlist, the one filled with the cloying, traditional carols Vera loved. I deleted the entire thing. I started a new playlist. I added quiet, instrumental jazz. I added some modern, somber folk music. I added tracks that felt like snow and quiet, not forced on cheer. I saved the new playlist. I called it Silent Boundaries. It was perfect. The 90-day cooling-off period ended not with a thaw, but in a sterile, fluorescent-lit hearing room at the Boulder County Justice Center. This was not a criminal trial. Investigator Karras's federal fraud case was still being meticulously built. Piece by piece, this, today, was the civil hearing for my petition, turning my temporary agreement not to contact into a formal binding financial injunction. I sat next to Allison Pike, my files organized in front of me. Across the room, on the respondent's bench, sat Vera, Tanya, and Greg. They were not together. They were separated by their three different, weary-looking lawyers. The united front of Christmas Eve had completely fractured, replaced by the grim reality of self-preservation. They looked diminished, smaller, grayer. Allison was first. Your Honor, we have presented the sworn affidavits, the $84,000 financial analysis, and the fraudulent county filings. But to understand the totality of the coercion, the court must understand the psychological context. The petitioner was manipulated under the guise of family obligation, culminating in a conspiracy to defraud. She nodded to the clerk. We present Exhibit D, a forensic audio analysis, performed by a court-certified voice expert of a call recorded on Ms. Weaver's home security system on December 10th or so. The expert, a dry, precise man named Dr. Alvarez, testified. He confirmed the voices of Vera and Tanya. He confirmed the immutable hash codes of the digital file. The transcript was read into the permanent record. I don't want to spend Christmas with that loser. Just until it is done, then we cut her off. She will sign. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Elliot, looked over her glasses at Vera and Tanya. Their lawyers shuffled papers, their faces grim. There was no defense for this. It was raw, unadulterated intent. But the real blow came next. Allison called Investigator Karras as a witness regarding the county's parallel findings. He confirmed the forged D. Weaver signature. He confirmed the expired notary's seal. But, Your Honor, Karras said, his voice level, our investigation uncovered further evidence of willful intent. We subpoenaed the email records of the notary with the expired license, Mr. Arthur Jensen. We found this. The document was projected onto the screen for the entire court to see. It was an email from Greg, sent on December 20th, 4 days before the ambush. The subject line, easy money. The body, Arthur, just show up at the time I said, 5 minutes of your time. Don't worry about the expired seal. No one's checking. I'll make sure there's a $500 holiday tip in it for you. Just stamp and go. A low gasp went through the courtroom. Greg's lawyer dropped his pen, and it clattered loudly on the table. This was not negligence. This was not a clerical error. This was a documented, premeditated conspiracy to commit fraud. Offering a bribe, Greg was finished. Tanya's lawyer, a thin, ferret-like man, saw his client's escape route closing. He leaped up. Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Fairchild, was not aware of this correspondence. She was manipulated by her husband, just as Mrs. Weaver was. She, too, was a victim of Mr. Fairchild's desperation. Tanya, on cue, began to cry. He told me it was complex, she wept. He said it was just paperwork to help my mother. I didn't know. Greg's face turned a deep, blotchy purple. You lying... Objection, his lawyer shouted. But Allison Pike stood up slowly, a predator's calm. Your Honor, Investigator Karras, one more exhibit, if you please, the metadata analysis of the final PDF. A new complex screen of data filled the monitor. This is the digital history of the toxic, durable power of attorney, Karis explained. The document Mr. Fairchild intended to have notarized on Christmas Eve. The file itself was created on Mr. Fairchild's office computer, correct, but the most significant and most toxic edits were made 2 days later. He pointed to a line of code. Those 7 specific clauses, the gifting clause, the waiver of liability, the waiver of contest, they were not made on Mr. Fairchild's machine. They were added on the evening of December 21st from an IP address registered to the defendant's home and from a laptop logged in as Tanya Fairchild. My analysis confirms she was the architect of the document's most lethal provisions. Tanya's crying stopped. Instantly, she was caught. She was not just the accessory, she was the co-architect. The judge had seen enough. She held up her hand. That will be all. I am finding in favor of the petitioner, Ms. Daniela Weaver. Her voice was like gavel strikes. I am issuing a 3-year financial injunction, Mrs. Weaver, Mrs. Fairchild, Mr. Fairchild. You are barred from contacting Ms. Daniela Weaver by any means, public or private. You are barred from using her name, her credit, her likeness, or her personal identity in any form. You are barred from coming within 500 feet of her residence or her place of business. Northwind Supply Systems. Any and all communication must go through counsel. Violation of this order will result in your immediate arrest. She looked at Greg. Furthermore, based on the blatant evidence of civil fraud, I am ordering a summary judgment on the petitioner's financial claims. Mr. Fairchild, you will repay Ms. Weaver in full for all associated legal fees. You will also repay, with interest, the consulting fees you stole from the joint account. You have 60 days. It was over. But then, a small, shaking hand went up. Vera. Your Honor? She whispered, standing up, her lawyer trying to pull her back down. Please, Your Honor, may I say something? Judge Elliott looked at her, her expression softening for just a fraction of a second. Mrs. Weaver, briefly. She's my daughter. Vera wept, her voice a thin, broken sound. My youngest daughter. I know what I did. I was selfish. I was a weak, selfish old woman. I was afraid of losing my house. I let them confuse me. I just want the right to see her again. If she ever wants to see me, please, Your Honor, don't take that right away. Please, don't take my daughter away from me forever. The room was heavy. This was it. The final, emotional appeal. The last, desperate pull on the guilt strings that had defined my life. Allison squeezed my arm under the table. I stood up. I did not look at my mother. I looked directly at Judge Elliott. Your Honor, I said, and my voice was clear. It was steady. It did not shake. For 32 years, I was told that love was an obligation. I was told that my duty was to be the infrastructure, that I was the rock. But a rock is just something to be stepped on. It is something to be ignored until you need it. I finally turned my head and looked at my mother. Her eyes were wide, pleading. I am not angry anymore, I said, and I realized, with a shock, that it was true. But I am not a resource. Respect, I said, my voice resonating in the quiet room, is the prerequisite. It is not a seasonal gift. It is the barrier to entry, and you, all of you, have lost your access. I turned back to the judge. The order stands. Judge Elliott held my gaze. She nodded. Once. The order stands. She banged her gavel. We are adjourned. We walked out of the Justice Center into the cold, bright light of a March afternoon. Thin, wet snow was falling, melting as it hit the pavement. Allison was smiling. That, Daniela, was a home run. Danny, wait! I turned. Tanya was running down the steps, her lawyer trailing behind her. shouting her name. She stopped a few feet away, her face blotchy and desperate. The injunction was not technically active for another 24 hours. She was using her last few moments. "Danny, please," she said, her voice raw. "The debt, the federal investigators, I don't know what to do. Greg he's going to jail, isn't he? I'm going to lose everything. I'm your sister." She moved forward, her arms half outstretched, her eyes pleading for that old, familiar hug, the hug that always preceded a demand. I did not flinch. I did not move. I just took one deliberate step back. My arms stayed at my sides. The rejection was so clear, so final. It was as if I had slammed a door in her face. Her arms fell. I reached into my bag. I pulled out a small, white business card. "You're right, Tanya. You're in a terrible position." I held it out to her. She looked at it, confused. "This is the card for a nonprofit credit counseling service," I said. "They are very good. They specialize in Chapter 7 bankruptcy. You said you needed a lawyer. Now you need a different one." She stared at the card, then at me, her mind unable to process an interaction that was not emotional or manipulative. I was not triumphant. I was not angry. I was just practical. I let the card fall from my fingers. It fluttered and landed on the wet pavement between us. "Good luck, Tanya," I said. I turned and walked away, leaving her there with her last, best option. Allison and I were halfway down the block when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. A text message. It was from Maria, my VP at Northwind. Subject: Urgent, Portland. Body: Danny, we have a crisis. The port strike in Portland has just escalated. Our entire Pacific Northwest supply chain is about to seize. I need a new plan. I need a new logistics route. Yesterday. How fast can you get me one? A year ago, this text would have sent me into a spiral of panic. A crisis. An emergency. Another fire to put out for someone else. But standing there, on the wet pavement, the snow melting on my coat, I read the text again. A crisis. An urgent project. A new plan to build. I smiled. A real, genuine smile. I did not text Maria back. I hit call. "Maria, I'm on it," I said. "I'll have a draft proposal for a reroute through Tacoma by end of day. Give me 90 minutes. I hung up. I looked at Allison. "I have to go. I have a problem to solve." "Go get him, Daniela," she smiled. I turned and dialed my next call. "Hey, Priya," I said, my voice lighter than I had ever heard it. "It's done. We won. All counts." I heard her scream on the other end of the line. "Yes," I laughed. "So, I have an urgent project for work. But, after that, are you free tonight? Let's go out. Let's celebrate. My treat." That night, I did not work late. I sent my proposal to Maria at 7 p.m. I met Priya at 8. We drank 2 bottles of champagne at a restaurant I had always thought was too expensive. I got home late. My small apartment was quiet. I walked over to the closet. In the back, I had stored a small, 4-foot artificial tree, the one I never had the heart to put up. I took it out. I set it up by the window. It was March, but it did not matter. I had 1 box of ornaments. Inside, under all the old faded ones, was a single, new ornament I had bought at the pottery studio. It was a simple, glazed ceramic disc, the color of a deep blue night sky. I hung it on the highest branch. I stood back and looked at my small, quiet, ridiculous, perfect tree. I smiled, a small private smile. "Christmas," I whispered to the empty room. "Finally, it's mine." The background music fades. The only sound left is the steady, quiet ticking of a clock. The old countdown, the one that ended on December 24th, was over. A new one, the one measuring my own life, was just beginning. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are listening from, so please drop a comment below. Let's connect and share our thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.